Denmark is leading a military exercise with hundreds of troops from several European NATO members in Greenland, a maneuver that coincides with months of tensions over the Trump administration's desire for U.S. jurisdiction over the vast Arctic territory. According to Associated Press, the Arctic Light 2025 exercise, which follows maneuvers with identical or similar titles in previous years, involves more than 550 service members from Denmark and NATO allies France, Germany, Sweden and Norway, according to the Danish military. On Wednesday Danish, French and German soldiers trained infiltrating an enemy base by helicopter near Kangerlussuaq in western Greenland. Major Morten Kruse of the Danish army stressed the difficult terrain and remoteness of Greenland as the biggest challenges for his soldiers. "There's a lot of hills and altitude meters. And that means it is very hard for my soldiers to carry all their stuff in their bag. It takes a long time to move from A to B by foot," Kruse said after the exercise. The exercise also includes Swedish reconnaissance units, who are using drones to spot enemy movement during the drills. Kangerlussuaq is the main base for the Danish Air Force on the island. Located 25 kilometers further inland than the other coastal settlements in Greenland, the airstrip is protected by mountains on both sides. The nearby glacier creates a stable climate zone which makes the airfield usable throughout the year, unlike other airports on the coast, which have to put up with the ever-unpredictable weather in Greenland. The stated aim of the exercise is to strengthen the operational readiness of the Danish armed forces and Greenland, a strategically located island that is a semi-autonomous territory of Denmark. The military says its personnel is training along with allies to reinforce their joint response capabilities against destabilizing threats to Greenland, the Kingdom of Denmark, and NATO in the North Atlantic and Arctic regions.
There's two aspects that's challenging. The first is that there's no real infrastructure, so we need to move everything by boat or by air, and that makes it very difficult to resupply the company. And the other thing is that there's a lot of hills and altitude meters, and that means that it's very hard for my soldiers to carry all their stuff in their bag. It takes a long time to move from A to B by foot.
Die Zusammenarbeit insbesondere mit unseren Gastgebern, den Dänen, aber auch den französischen Alliierten hier vor Ort, läuft reibungslos, weil im Grunde der Erfolg oder der Misserfolg vom Einsatz militärischer Kräfte in diesem Umfeld von den ganz grundlegenden militärischen Fähigkeiten abhängt. Und da wird einem französischen oder einem dänischen Soldat abends genauso kalt wie einem deutschen, und gleichzeitig genießen wir alle gemeinsam noch Sonnenuntergang des Polarlichts.
The Dobropilya offensive of Russian troops, which was loudly announced by Z propaganda, is rapidly turning into a failure. Units of the Ukrainian Armed Forces and the First Corps of the NGU Azov cleared the settlement of Pankovka, but, what is even more important, continue to move, creating an extremely dangerous situation for Russian units in this direction. Experts call the situation catastrophic for the Russian army. According to military expert Alexander Kovalenko, Ukrainian troops have successfully consolidated their positions in Pankovka and are fighting for Mayak and Novoteretsky. These actions could lead to cutting off the so-called appendix, the narrow line of advance of Russian troops towards Dobropilya. If the Ukrainian army cuts through this salient, units of 5 Russian brigades that are part of the 51st Army will be surrounded. Among them are the 110th Motorized Rifle Brigade, the 39th Separate Brigade, as well as units of the 114th and 132nd Brigades. Kovalenko notes that in case of encirclement, the Russians will lose significant forces, which could disrupt the entire operation in the Pokrovsk direction. Even now, the Ukrainian counter-offensive is eating up the enemy's initiative, and the occupiers' actions themselves look like a senseless throwing of people into a meat grinder. According to the expert, the Russian command is not making active attempts to strengthen this area, concentrating on other directions. This makes the likelihood of local encirclement even higher. The situation near Dobropolye is becoming a turning point, where the Russians try to demonstrate success. The Ukrainian armed forces are creating a real threat of encirclement and catastrophic losses for them. Recall Russia's offensive around Pokrovsk has finally collapsed into disorganized, scattered assaults, exposing the total breakdown of its campaign. Seizing the moment, Ukrainian forces struck back with momentum, liberating another key town and turning the tide of the battle. The fighting around Pokrovsk has entered a new phase, where the intensity of Russian assaults on the flanks has clearly declined, and their once grand offensive has fractured into scattered, uncoordinated attacks. What remains is little more than small groups probing Ukrainian defenses, seemingly just to avoid a complete halt that would openly expose the failure of the Russian campaign. On the western flank, near Udachne, Russian efforts have been reduced to chaotic infiltration attempts without any combined arms support. On the eastern flank, near Mirnorad, the story is much the same, with piecemeal assaults ending in abandonment of vehicles and panicked retreats under Ukrainian fire. The larger picture is unmistakable, as the Russian encirclement attempts around Pokrovsk have fallen apart. Ukraine has seized the opportunity to strike back, and near Udachne, the lack of Russian coordination was turned against them. Ukrainian forces launched a deliberate push, clearing the settlement and raising the national flag over its center. What had been temporarily filled with scattered Russian infiltrators was retaken swiftly, with videos showing Ukrainian units inside the village. Overall, Russia committed significant resources and manpower to the Pokrovsk axis, throwing battalion after battalion against Ukrainian defenses. Yet, every thrust on the western, eastern and northern flanks has collapsed, leaving nothing but wrecked vehicles and soaring casualty lists. To distract from this, commanders have resorted to sewer infiltrations and other theatrics that fail to alter the battlefield balance.